So the report on Matt Gaetz from the U.S. House Committee on Ethics got released today, and it's kind of crazy. And I thought I'd go over the spicy bits for people that are interested, in case you don't want to read all 42 pages of it. This is a long one, but it kept on getting more insane, so hang in here for the ride. The report starts with a summary of its findings backed by evidence, which includes, from at least 2017 to 2020, Gaetz regularly paid women for engaging in snuggle activities with them. In 2017, Gaetz engaged in snuggle activities with a 17-year-old girl. During the period of 2017 to 2019, Gaetz used or possessed illegal drugs, including the nose candy and ecstasy on multiple occasions. Gaetz accepted gifts, including transportation and lodging, in connection with a 2018 trip to the Bahamas, in excess of the permissible amounts for congressional people. In 2018, Gaetz arranged for his chief of staff to assist a woman with whom he engaged in a snuggle activity in obtaining a passport, falsely indicating to the U.S. Department of State that she was a constituent. Gaetz knowingly and willfully sought to impede and obstruct the committee's investigation of his conduct. Surprise. And Gaetz has acted in a manner that reflects discreditably upon the House of Representatives. Oh, you think? You think that, do you, committee? You think that all these things together might reflect poorly on Congress? Huh? They go on to say that they did not find evidence that he violated the federal snuggle trafficking statutes. They also say that he was uncooperative with the investigation. Really? I'm shocked. I am shocked. Shocked, I say. He didn't want to help the committee investigate all these things that he did? Absolutely astounding. There's some BS in here about how the committee didn't want to go further or release their findings to protect the women involved, which I sort of understand, but also seems at the same time to be a cop-out. In the coming days, you'll probably see news stories about how Gaetz says he got unfair treatment on this and wasn't allowed to tell his side of the story, but the report notes that Gaetz was asked to testify several times to clarify his side of the story and actually blew off a congressional subpoena to appear before the committee. Gaetz put out a statement saying he would no longer voluntarily participate in the investigation. The report goes on to reference some laws, including the Mann Act, a federal law that makes it illegal to transport minors across state lines for the purpose of snuggling. This is actually the same law that J. Edgar Hoover used to make Charlie Chaplin flee the country. If you want that crazy story, I recommend listening to the You Must Remember This podcast episode on Charlie Chaplin. It's a banger. But getting back to the spicy stuff, apparently as soon as Gaetz was sworn into office in 2017, he hooked up with this guy, Joel Greenberg, a Florida county tax collector. They go to parties together with young women who are contacted through a specific kind of website, which is called a sugar dating website. That's a term I did not know before this. The website wasn't exactly a snuggle for money website, but it was pretty close. So Greenberg gives Gaetz his password to this site to use. The committee has evidence that these two would throw weekend parties with these girls, with Gaetz hitting 3 different ATMs for cash at one of them. The committee also has various payment records of the money given to these women in the form of cash, checks, and transfer services like Venmo and PayPal. This dude was out there just using straight Venmo. He even put in notes about it. Also, Greenberg would pay for snuggles for Gaetz, and then Gaetz would pay him back. This Greenberg guy would get indicted on charges in 2020 for a lot of these things and worse, and would plead guilty to them later on, getting sentenced in 2022. So the committee says, from 2017 to 2020, Gaetz made tens of thousands of dollars in payments to women that the committee determined were likely in connection with snuggle activities and or drug use. He used his own peer-to-peer payments accounts or used someone else's. The report then has a wonderful spreadsheet table showing these transactions, which is honestly like some accountant's erotic fanfic. It would also appear that his then-girlfriend at the time was one of these women who got payments and would work as a liaison between the two men and other women. In one text message to the women, the girlfriend said that the two men were a little cash-strapped at the time and were wondering if they could get a customer appreciation week. I think the discussion of whether snuggle work is a valid thing to have, but it's funny to note here that the committee found Gaetz had a weird way of doing it. The payments were never up front. He would just sort of send them payments afterwards. I don't think that's a great idea or a way to run a business. And you should really get some sort of a upfront payment if you're doing that sort of thing. Gaetz is also reported to be kind of lazy in that he asked the women to supply the drugs for him, asking them to bring certain things. I mean, come on, man. You got to have your own guy to get this sort of thing. I can't imagine how embarrassing it would be if your paid-for date showed up to your party and wasn't able to acquire the candy that you asked for. Super awkward. And there were a few of these parties, with the committee finding evidence of at least 20 of them between 2017 and 2020. Then the report goes into talking about that previous girlfriend I mentioned, who was 21 when she started dating a 35-year-old Gaetz. If you couldn't guess from before, they weren't in an exclusive relationship, where Gaetz would have snuggle sessions with other women from that website, with his girlfriend also participating with them, or just acting as an intermediary. She has received tens of thousands of dollars from Gaetz, and whether this money was just part of being in a relationship or more of a business transaction, we won't know, because she has pleaded the fifth and won't be talking about it. The next part of the report goes on to describe how a 21-year-old was convinced to meet with Gaetz at a hotel, but Gaetz didn't tell her that Greenberg and another 20-year-old woman would be there as well for some four-player twister. Afterwards, Gaetz wrote her a $750 check with the description, "tuition reimbursement," in the memo line. Other stories in the report include a trip to Key West in 2017. That was 2 guys, 4 girls. There's some testimony from a couple older women from the website, and by that I mean one was 25. And she talked about serving as a date to escort Gaetz to various events and would occasionally lead to snuggling, but they were not required to do so. There's also the testimony by her friend, who was 27, who also snuggled with Gaetz for money, but not knowing that her friend, the 25-year-old, also did so, or that Gaetz had a girlfriend at this time as well. In 2018, Gaetz and 2 other men took a trip to the Bahamas with 6 women. It was reported to the committee that Gaetz snuggled at least 4 of them, and was also doing ecstasy and other drugs. The committee couldn't find any financial transactions with this trip, but one woman stated that the trip itself was the payment. The committee reviewed text messages for a party in January 2019 that involved Gaetz, his girlfriend, and 2 other women, with Gaetz asking them about obtaining drugs. In this one, the committee did find evidence of compensation for their time and their efforts. The report goes over a July 2017 party Gaetz attended and had snuggles with multiple women at, including a 17-year-old, all of whom were paid. Gaetz and the 17-year-old identified as victim A in the report apparently did it twice, with at least one time in the presence of other party attendees. The report states that she was a junior in high school at the time. Victim A did acknowledge that she was on ecstasy at the time and did not tell Gaetz her age. She did recall Gaetz using some at the time as well. Gaetz has denied all this, by the way. He's also denied that any of these payments were for snuggle time, and that this was all just part of a smear campaign, and these donations were just out of the goodness of his heart. Then the report goes into inappropriate reporting of gifts and trips, which is less interesting. It also goes into the obstruction, which is mostly just Gaetz asking for extension on deadlines to provide information, and then missing those deadlines. Then he wouldn't provide any of the requested information at all, or would only provide a small portion. During this time, Gaetz would continually beg for other higher members in Congress to bail him out, calling the investigation weaponized or a witch hunt. The report sums up with the findings, which the committee basically says, yep, he did all those things. Because, of course he did. The very last part, actually the most worrisome, is the views of Chairman Michael Gaetz on behalf of the dissenting committee members. He states that he and other people who voted not to release this report believe it shouldn't have been released because Gaetz is no longer a member of Congress. He states that they don't disagree with the findings, that Gaetz did all this stuff. He then clutches his pearls talking about how this hasn't been done since 2006, which is like release one of these things. It absolutely had nothing to do with Gaetz's flavor, I'm sure, with Trump at the time, or his selection to be Attorney General. Yeah, definitely didn't have anything to do with that. The government should, in my opinion, be as transparent as possible, and we can all see why certain people would want to cover this up. And that's all from me, your Monster News reporter. I feel kind of gross after all that. Maybe I should take a shower.